The views, comments, and opinions of the following program do not necessarily reflect those of Morris Media Studios, MorrisMediaLive.com, or its affiliates. Listener discretion is advised.
Well, good afternoon, good evening, good after morning, good after everything. We are here. And for those joining us right now, you're watching the culture of film and music. And today it's no different. We're always bringing you people that are doing something not only for themselves that's progressive, but also for our community. That's so important. You've got to look out for your people. Look out for your family. Look out for yourself. But most of all, if you look to God for that strength and that help, you're going to start out with an alignment that you cannot get anywhere else at any time. So, with that being said, I have some special guests on today, and I'm going to tell you how things happen, guys. You got to believe me. For 2020, which is our year of, 2020 means clear vision. That's what they call perfect vision. And in the year 2020, I told people, I said, you know what? It's all about kingdom building and kingdom building only. And I had people coming at me day and night trying to get on my agenda, trying to send me their agenda. And I'm like, look, if it doesn't align with kingdom building, I don't need to be partaking of it in any form because it doesn't do what I'm trying to do. It doesn't accomplish what I needed to do. So let me tell you something right quick. I had a show today, and hats off for Monty B. Sharpton, because he's going to come on later on because he's got another film that he's coming out with, and he's got a great short that he wants to show us. But he was supposed to be on the show today. But, like I always say, you're supposed to be where you're supposed to be at the time. And we were unable to communicate today to kind of finalize everything, and so he went to the other side of town, had some other business to take care of, and I ran into my guest who was with me yesterday, for the birthday party I had. Thank you for everybody attending. And ran into another brother that I had met a few months ago, and he stays in the air. And I mean physically as well as literally. And I just happened to be walking out, and the brother's like, oh, how you doing? I'm like, oh, we're doing a show tonight. And that's how that came to be, the show that we're doing tonight. And you're going to be blessed by it because these people are some of the best informational people in their field. And they're going to share it with you, our community, and I hope you're ready to receive. My name is D Nice, and to my left, we have a lady that's been in the industry forever. As long as she was walking, she was negotiating, whether it was in a contract, whether it was working with a musician, or whether it was opening the door for her people to get to the next level. As one of the top entertainment attorneys, a manager, she's done it all. And she's here to share some of that wisdom with you today. Welcome to the dais, my co-host for the day. And she'll soon have a show coming through here, too. She'll explain that to you. Miss Rhonda, Dr. Rhonda, how you doing? We're talking as if it will be her with a doctorate degree behind her name.
Actually, Juris Doctorate is a doctorate level degree.
I wanted you to explain that to them people.
I taught at a university, yes. And I was paid and treated as though I was a doctor because that is a doctor of law.
That's exactly right.
That's exactly what it means, doctor of law.
Dr. Rhonda Dixon. That's what.
Right.
Thank you for. I like the way that you put it. It's like I only give so much and let people just really just talk about what they do, because a lot of us don't. When they see JD or this or MD or whatever, do you understand that in today's world you've got to know what those definitions are, what those insignias are, what the logos are, and if we don't understand it, we don't go to the right spot. Right? There's a commercial out there which is the funniest. They've got this guy sitting there and he's in a robe. Right? He's in like what the doctors give you to change into to get an exam, right? Mm-hmm. And so the doctor's popping his gloves and everything. He says, "You ready for this exam?" He said, "I'm here for an eye exam." And so he said, in other words, he's like, if you're in the wrong spot, you know what I'm saying, nowadays, get up and check it out. That's right. And that's always a good thing to do, to get up and check it out. Miss Dixon, Tell us a little about where you've been, what you're doing right now.
Well, I pretty much kind of am a Renaissance woman.
Right.
You know, I have my hands in a lot of different things. Mm-hmm. And I'm a lawyer. Yes. And I did entertainment law for many years. I also set up a substance abuse clinic to help my community. And that was right down the street on Crenshaw and 48th. Mm-hmm. And I think I like to say I helped a lot of people recover from drugs and also stay out of trouble and out of gangs and right. probably save some lives. Because some of my kids, you know, we take them to the office and people don't realize that most of the kids get killed right after school from 3 to 8. That's where a lot of the gang violence happens, right in broad daylight.
Right, right.
So, you know, my mission is to help people. I always say that because I'm named Rhonda, that song kind of doomed me.
Right.
I can't tell you how many times I've heard that song. I don't know where they got it from, but somehow I got, you know, I have to tape my hand down, tape my mouth shut because I'm always over volunteering and ending up doing things, you know. Like today I was at a meeting of I sit on this cannabis oversight committee. Right. And that's one of the other things I do is I'm trying to make sure that we get our fair share of money out of the cannabis because it's really passing us up and, you know, and we were harmed. I mean, disproportionately harmed by it. Right. So therefore, the whole issue of social equity was to carve out a niche and let us have some possibility of getting some reparations for the war on drugs, another type of reparation. And it's interesting because I was talking to the Dr. Gerald Higginbotham, who is also a pilot, and he's going to be on next. But we were talking about this economic issue, and I'll let him describe more about what he's doing about it. But this enforced economic poverty is a war. It's a war that's continuing. It's a continuing transgression. So that's why we can't let people off the hook because people nowadays that are in this, you know, that maybe white people say, okay, I wasn't there. I didn't have anything to do with it.
Right, right.
Yes, you do, because as long as you're benefiting from it and continuing to allow it to happen, and even economic warfare, which is what we're under right now. We're under a war, and it is economic. And we're at war always in this country.
Right.
And the reason why is because if you look at it, we incarcerate more of our people than any other nation. The county of Los Angeles has more people in jail right now than some countries have. The murder rate in the United States is higher than some countries that are at war.
Right.
That stay at perpetual war. Our annual death toll from gun violence is higher than theirs. So we really have to look at that interpersonal conflict, the microaggressions that we have to deal with all the time, and the economic slights and just, you know, like not getting the job, not getting the promotion, making 61 cents to the dollar from what a white male makes, not being able to save money, always getting the bad loans, the redlining. When you do get insurance, it's way higher. They're just sucking the money out of our community in subtle ways, and we've normalized that.
Right.
We really have, because now we're economic slaves. Exactly. And he's going to go in and talk more about the whole slavery issue, but it was always about economics, but we're economic slaves, and we keep staying tapped into that, you know?
Right. We have not because we ask not, and we stay where we're at is because we don't have a knowledge base that helps you get out of that. Then who can you blame in the long run?
So right now what I do is criminal law, and the reason I'm doing criminal law is because we get caught up in that system all the time, and that's another form of slavery. We talked about mass incarceration. We talked about the loophole in the 14th Amendment that says there should be no slavery except for penal servitude, meaning being in the penitentiary and serving. So there's no difference, really. I mean, they use that small loophole to incarcerate the largest number of people that has ever been incarcerated in the history of the world. And to this day, we have that many people in prison. And even like flash incarceration stuff, I'm seeing that most people are getting put in jail for like DUIs. Well, if you're an addict, that's actually a disease. And that's not the way to treat it.
Right.
You know, we should be rehabilitating people. I'm not saying they shouldn't have some punishment, but the punishment should be A, it should fit the crime, and B, it should result in rehabilitation and being able to be productive and useful members of society instead of being stigmatized and marginalized.
Disproportionate. Thank you. We're going to come back and we're going to delve into that a little further, more into that one there. But this next guest we have on with us today, I met him a few months ago, and I've been very impressed. I've got a book that I've had here now that I'm showing you, and he's going to talk about it a little more. But this is Your Captain Speaking, Life's Lessons I've Learned at 35,000 Feet, Gerald A. Higginbotham. This young man is a professional pilot for a major airline. So he's not joking, you know what I'm saying? And so he knows how to navigate the airwaves, the skyways, because everything's got to get a clearance. Everything's got to go in the progressional process, and then it's up to him to get you where you need to go. And so he's here today to talk about some of those experiences and share some experiences that's going to help you to get where you need to go. Ladies and gentlemen, help us welcome our guest today, Mr. Gerald Higginbotham. How you doing, young man?
Man, I am too blessed to be depressed and too anointed to be disappointed.
Wow.
Well, they say your confession equal your possession.
That's real talk.
You have what you say.
Right.
And I'm so honored, be nice to be on your show. And it's just really interesting how today this is how my life is.
Right.
You know, everything is providential. Mm-hmm. Everything is divine order. And I wasn't expecting to be on your show.
Right.
I mean, it just came out. And so anything that come out of me is going to come from, I'm led by the Spirit of God.
That's it.
I tell you, I have lived my life that way. You know, I'm a native Los Angeles. I was raised in South Central Los Angeles in Inglewood. Right. So I've been here in the Los Angeles area. I was born here, but I'm just returning home after 30 years. Mm-hmm. You know, I've been living out in St. Louis, Missouri. I was out there flying for TWA.
Right.
But while I was out there in the community, I was active in the community, testing a new bottom-up model that will address the social, political, economic issues that we face. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I've asked the tough questions that most people have not asked. And I want to give them to your listening audience because it has taken 36 years to get these questions answered and to come up with a comprehensive model to address the social, political, economic issues.
Right.
And one of the questions, and it's got 5 parts to it. Mm-hmm. Who created you? The B part of that, who are you? C part of that, what are you? D part of that, what should you be becoming? Mm-hmm. The E part of that, what should you be doing as you walk on the planet? Right. That's one question. Second question that you got to get answered, you know, where am I visibly positioned in American society, socially, politically, and economically? And you can't be guessing. Before I take that jet flight, I got to know my longitude and latitude. Mm-hmm. It's critical because if I don't know my starting point, not only am I in trouble, but everybody get on board the jet and gonna have an issue. Mm-hmm. Third question I had to get answered. If you keep doing what you've been doing, mm-hmm. you'll keep producing the same result. Where do you need to be? What's your new destination? What vehicle gets you there? What's the flight plan? I mean, what's the life plan? Mm-hmm. How long will it take?
Right.
Fifth question, how did we get in the present predicament that we're in today? Because not asking that question, you're doomed to repeat it. Mm. Sixth question, if you're not flying the jet, you're not the captain, who is and where are they currently taking you?
Right.
B part of the question, why am I still on board this vehicle? C part of the question, how do I get off?
Real.
Right.
Right.
And then the seventh question, am I now willing and ready to pay the cost to get to my new destination?
That's right.
Those were 7 thought-provocative questions that took me 36 years to get answered and to come up with the process. And that book that you're reading, I gave you, This is Your Captain Speaking,
right.
It begins to help you see it from a different perspective. Mm-hmm. Now, I have a model. I've written another book called Collaboration, Teamwork, and Networking, a case study for systematically working together to achieve successful living. And all these books are out at Amazon. This speaks to the new 21st century, the new social, political, economic condition. But our group is not ready for that. Where we are right now, with us shifting from an industrial-based society to the information age, we got to fix the foundation. And the things that you're talking about, my precious sister, we're still dealing with the after effect of American slavery. It has never been properly put to bed. And so we're going to put it to bed on our watch. And I'm using this book here called America's Little Black Book. Everybody needs to read this book because this is the conversation that we have to have if we're going to begin to heal the foundation. And so this is information we're going to have to learn, unlearn, and relearn. We've had bad data.
Right.
Life is choice driven. And the quality of life that we live is based on the quality decisions that we make. So we got to have good new information. And that's why I'm so honored to connect with you, because one of the things that we have to do, we need a culture business incubator for the American slave culture, not African American. African American is a United States immigration term for the whites and blacks who were birthed on the continent of Africa that came here legally by plane or boat and nationalized. There's a lot of white African Americans here in the United States. But we need to talk about the American slave culture.
Right.
Because America bred slaves. She created a new culture. And we got birthrights. Those 7 states, they were baby making mills, those plantations. And so America created a new culture called the American slave culture. And so we have to learn this information. And this particular book really is so phenomenal. It helps you learn, unlearn, relearn, and then you can begin to move forward, because we have to address the economic issue. Slavery was a business. It was, and we were valuable.
Yes.
Until corporate America kicked us off the plantation 158 years ago.
Right.
And so the cultures still have been struggling. And so what we can do, each and every one of us have gifts. We have skills. Each and every one of us are businesses. And so we need to do business in our own name called slave.
Wow.
Why this is so important, family, is because the slave culture has never been properly put in the economic pecking order. We've been called slaves, colored, Negro, black, now African American. Which one is it, and why so many name changes?
Right.
Normally it takes an act of Congress. If you've been watching the impeachment trials, it takes an act of Congress, those senators, to change things.
Right.
But we change our name every 25 years.
And or it's changed for us. And it's all propaganda.
It's all propaganda, but I want us to begin to do business in our culture name, slave, because that name is worth trillions of dollars. And so what I want to do here in the Los Angeles area, and I'm working on this piece in Las Vegas, St. Louis, is putting in culture business incubators. It's just like a brain is an organ. If a baby come out and the brain is not properly developed, they put it in an incubator.
Right.
Well, the American slave culture was purposely bred to be ignorant here in America. We're still ignorant to this day. And when I say ignorant, lacking in knowledge. We don't have all the information.
Right.
And so it needs to be put, the American slave culture is 400 years old as of this year. It really needs to be put in an incubator so we can begin to culture it and redevelop it and then create businesses. Because when you have businesses, you can create jobs.
Right.
Then we can give people opportunities. So I want to launch here in Los Angeles the American Slave Culture Business Incubator.
So can you tell us what your acronym for slave means? Because a lot of people get offended by the word, and a lot of Black people do not want to revisit, or be reminded, unlike Jewish people who will throw the Holocaust up at any time.
Listen,
all the time to just shame you into doing whatever they want
right.
and silence you.
Yes.
We as a people don't like to talk about that. Like, for instance, I'm light-skinned. And I remember when I was young, we had a situation where we were doing, I was studying American history. And in the whole school, there was only 5 Black people. So when it came up that I raised my hand and said, look, I just need a point of clarification. I know we're in U.S. History 101, but for the last 2 weeks, we've been studying European history. We've been studying about Auschwitz and Stuttgart. Last time I checked, that was in Europe. That wasn't in this continent at all. And therefore should not, and then we were only involved in that war for 2 years legitimately. Now, of course, we were behind the scenes for the other 2 years, but that was 4 years of history. There were 20 years of the Reconstruction era that was only covered for less than 20 minutes because I wrote a report about it. But it was a whole chapter or 2 in the book that was skipped over. So I said, I just wonder, why we're studying European history in such a small, minuscule part of it for 2 weeks. And we didn't even spend 20 minutes on the Reconstruction era. So my teacher, who I didn't realize, Chernoff, I didn't realize they were Russian Jews. I didn't realize that was his culture that he was enculturating me with. But and so there was a girl behind me. She started crying. She goes, my uncle had a tattoo from Auschwitz. And I couldn't resist. I said, I have a tattoo all over my body because a white man raped my grandmother. And I have to live with it every day. You're just talking about your uncle and you just saw a tattoo on him. This tattoo was already on me, all over me. So she was like, the teacher was like, Rhonda Dixon, I said, I know, I'm on my way. I had my book and I was going to the principal's office because that's exactly what I wanted to do. I didn't want to hear no more about and you still can't get away from it. I was an entertainment lawyer for years, and all I could hear about, and our whole propaganda is propagandized into not just European history, but European history from the culture of Jewish culture, because that's not a race, that's a culture. And it's just, that's all it is. And we don't even realize it. We think people that look a certain way are, they're not. They're Jewish people. And the industry is run by people. And they would say that I was being, certain kind of way. But hey, you just got to call it as you see it.
3 things. You asked me a question, what is the name? Mm-hmm. Slave, because I have copyrighted it. Mm-hmm. I did it 2 years ago, July 18. Mm-hmm. And so I want to speak to that in just a second. But since you went there, this book here is American Slave History 101. We have now documented the paper trail of slavery. I'm so excited about this. You can see on the back of that card, there's 16 books. Mm-hmm. And so now it's documented, and it will be taught now at Bellum University in Louisville, Kentucky here this fall. So we're making history. American Slave History 101 now will be taught. I'm so excited about that piece. And the second thing, the name slave, what I've done, I got it before I do that. We should be proud to say we're descendants of American slaves. The Jewish culture do use it. They say they're descendants of the Holocaust, and they get paid.
They do.
And so what we need to
do, blame people all day long.
So we need to be saying we're the descendants of American slaves, not African, American slaves, so we can get paid too. Slavery was a business. Now, as it relates to the name slave, I have copyrighted it. And so when you copyright something, you have now the power to redefine the narrative. So just real briefly, the letter S means we're spirits, we have soul, we're saved, we're servant, we're sanctified, we're set apart, we're special, we're superior. We're the sons and daughters of the Most High God. The letter L means we're leaders, we're learners, we're lovers. God so loved the world that he gave. The letter A means we're Americans, we're awesome, we're anointed, we're appointed, we're achievers, we're admired. Everybody admires us. We had a person just leave the planet here, and everybody admired him for being so great. So people admire us. The letter V means we're victorious, we're vivacious, we're in it to win it. The letter E means we excel, we're excited, we're excellent, we're extraordinary, we're extroverts, we are doers. The descendants of American slaves have been branded with those qualities. It's been our thinking, our speaking, and our acting that truly makes the difference. We have birthrights. The reason why they kill, quote, quote, black, technically they're killing the American slave culture, because you got firstborn right. America bred slaves in this country. She created a whole new culture. And they brought that group here by force, not by choice. So they're non-immigrants. Everybody else come to America. They come willingly. They're immigrants. But the American slave culture, they were bred on those 7 southern plantations, and they're America's firstborn. And that's what we have to be thinking about is birthrights. We own America. And so we have to change our thinking, our speaking, and our acting, because we've been branded with those qualities that I told you about. And because when you think differently, you will speak differently. And when you speak differently, you will act differently, and it brings about the paradigm shift. And that's what this American slave business culture incubator will be about. We're going to learn about our culture.
Right.
And we're going to teach business, not business, but business.
Right.
So I wanted to talk about another acronym that you coined, TSA. At first I thought you were talking about the TSAs, but tell us what TSA stands for.
I'm so glad, yes. Being a pilot, I use acronyms. How many ever been on a jet? You coming through TSA.
Right.
Otherwise, you're not going flying. And if you come through there acting ignorant, they might just detain you for a few minutes so you can miss your flight. Well, TSA to me, that stands for think, speak, and act. Your thought life controls your life. It says, as a man thinketh in his heart, so is he.
Exactly.
And what you get down in abundance, it says, out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth is going to speak. And whatever you speak, you act on, and it produces a result. So that's a formula, TSA. So part of that book that you have there is my online Captain Millionaire training program, where I help people think differently, speak differently, act differently. 15 powerful principles. And when you apply these in your life, you become unstoppable. And then when you have the language of the rich, because the only difference between rich people and poor people is not money, it's words. Rich people have a rich vocabulary. Pookie and Jumbo got a poor. But poor people have a poor one. So we have to change our words because we got to start understanding about assets, liabilities, and they have a different language.
And they have different habits. I mean, language, like you said, it affects habits, routines.
Absolutely.
We have to be trained into that because we were trained out of it.
So what you trying to say?
When they came and took us.
We ignorant about financial things?
They forcefully snatched us away, and then they forcefully have enforced poverty on us. I mean, there's an economic war that has been going on ever since
We've
then,
been here.
And it's still happening to this day because of the extent that we have been economically disempowered. 61 cents to the dollar. That's what the average African American. Well, we won't say African American since you said, but the average black female is making 61 cents to the dollar. The average male may be making even less than that in certain zip codes, because we were doing this thing about social equity, and I was so shocked and angry to find I did a thesis for a class at Harvard at the Kennedy School last semester, and found out that in looking at the policy map for my thesis, I found out that in the zip code of 90011, which is where I grew up, the average median income of a 30-year-old black male in that area is $6,200 a year. That is, what can you do with that? How can you take care of your family? How can you be a meaningful contributor to society? How can you be anything but homeless, couch surfing? How can you do anything with $6,200 in Los Angeles? They said that in order to buy a home in LA, your salary has to be $117,000. At least.
And I agree with you, but you're going to have to change your words and your thought life because, see, you're talking about earned income. You're not talking about passive or portfolio. Because, see, we were told to go to school, get us a good education so we can get us a good paying job. J-O-B, that stands for just over bottom. Because if you lose your job, you go back to the bottom. So we were trained to work for money. And see, we weren't taught about how to make money work for us. Entrepreneurism. So we have to change the thought. Not so much no longer jobs, about creating business ownership, because wealth is only created through the ownership of land, labor, and capital that puts you in control of the production and the distributions of goods or services. And it is exchanges of dollars through business ownership is how wealth is created. God has given us power of getting wealth.
I have to tell you that. I'm very aware of that, but that's the reason why we sue people a lot, because we have to level the playing field. The problem is not that we didn't have, I know many people that had or have businesses. The problem is the economic disparity between getting access to capital, between being able to sell your goods. Like look at this cannabis industry. They keep on doing things, and then when it's mostly white males that are in that industry. And they have made it so that they just gave out 100 licenses, supposedly. And out of those 100 licenses, they were supposed to give priority to social equity applicants. It was supposed to be all social equity applicants. But when they showed up, 80 out of the 100, so that's 80%, were Ukrainian and Russian. 13 were black. Wow. 13 were from one group of investors that put together a pool for to help social equity applicants. The other 7 were just random people. But we fought really hard to try to get people a stake in these businesses. And the way that it was set up, that they had to have people that were low income and had been a victim of, they had been incarcerated.
The game has been rigged.
The game has been rigged. So, but hold on. So the way that it was rigged was that you had to have a certain amount of money. And so there you had to go begging to have an investor. And who's the investor? Usually the investor is some white guy. And what ends up happening is, he who has the cash makes the rules. So somehow or another, they have crafted these contracts so that they will end up taking over the company at some point in time.
And so what we have to do, because when I see that as an opportunity for us to come together and learn how to, and I'll put it out there, become financial intelligent on how to create wealth using contracts, because this whole society is set up for this is my field. I love teaching this piece here because we got to learn how to take $1 and create 60 with it the same way that they do, same way that the Russians do. We are ignorant, or I should say we're lacking in knowledge in this area. But just the three of us coming together, understanding the power of contracts, we can generate $100,000 between the three of us tonight when we understand how to create notes and use the game the same way the bankers play the game. We have to learn how to be the bank.
Well, we have to have a bank.
Negative.
That's what that movie, The Bankers, was about.
Well, I think that we can talk about that later, about how we create our own banking system and not having to use other folks' systems.
That's exactly correct.
And so it's just having the knowledge base. Because when you have the knowledge, you can be able to make that happen. Because we all need to learn and become financial literate to how the game work economically.
We have to almost go off the grid. So you've heard of susu? Have you heard of that before?
No, I haven't.
So the term susu is actually an economic term that Nigerians use it, and what they do is it's peer-to-peer lending. It's creating your own bank through your own network.
Yes.
And so they found that there was a book called Banker to the Poor. And that was the first book where this guy, it was in India, in Bangladesh. He's at a university, and every time he has to pass through these fields to see these people that are very, very poor, mostly women that are extremely poor. And he says, what can I do as an economic professor? I work at a university as a professor. How can I affect change here? And he found that by giving microloans, because he knew that these women were crafty and very... they were making things. They were making things, and they were using their skills to make money, but they didn't have the money to scale. So by giving them microloans, and they were very faithful to pay these loans back.
There's
so once they did, so they called it Banker to the Poor. They said, "Oh, this is a bad idea. You're going to give poor people money, and you expect them to pay it back." Yes, you know what? Every time it's been tried, the people are so grateful for the help. They don't want a hand out. They want a hand up.
I agree.
And like James Brown said, just open the door. I'll get it myself. Just stop stopping me from doing things. Stop blocking my actions. And this is what, when you say these things about, so one time, sometimes when you say things about us being ignorant, it's not so much ignorant as figuring out a way around the system that keeps figuring out ways to block us and always seeing that coming. It's like when you're, it's like there's a book called The Peaceful Warrior. We don't realize that we're at war every single day. And right now the war is economic. The war is mass distraction. As they say, the mass media is a weapon of mass distraction. It literally hijacks us by occupying our mind with things that are not important, which takes away our time, and then steers us in the wrong direction because we start believing the propaganda and the lies.
But you got to shut that off. This is where you have the power, the will to shut. I don't even listen to that information.
Well, you have to be aware and conscious of that, and so that that this is happening. This is all happening, and we think we're making choices. Oh, I want to watch this. I want to watch that. But what it's really doing is hijacking your brain and taking away
your mind.
This expensive real estate,
right?
And taking it and occupying it so that it can't be doing productive things. Because Black people throughout history have created some amazing inventions and haven't been given credit for it. As a matter of fact, look at the telephone. Lewis Latimer actually created the telephone. He won in the Court of Claims a patent lawsuit against Alexander Graham Bell. He's the actual inventor, a Black man, and he had over 800 patents.
A descendant of American slave.
Wow.
And he was actually a draftsman at a law firm, and this was in 1888, and this is during the so-called Reconstruction era. We had equal rights for a minute, for like 20 years. The Ku Klux Klan single-handedly mowed us down and took those rights away through fear and terror and with the complicity of the United States government and many people in power, a lot of policemen by day, Klansmen by night. Right, judges, police, a lot of very influential people were wearing those sheets.
I saw how the Indians, they didn't follow the path. They were not going to work for white man during that time period. They would rather kill themselves, and they created their own nation. Even though they they got them on their little land, they have created their own nation. We've decided to stay working with and integrate. And one of the things that I have done, I have no problem putting it on the air here, because as Prime Minister of the American slave nation, I've helped to create a new nation according to international laws and the laws of nation, which literally puts us in position to be able not to operate under federal laws. When you start, Indians don't pay taxes. Look, if you look at the Constitution, they don't pay taxes. Why should we, the American slave culture? And so we need to think a little bit differently outside of the box, because there's 21 million descendants of American slaves living here in the United States. That is a nation within a nation. But we've had mismanaged leadership that don't think and understand cultures. And so we have to now have a paradigm shift and look at it differently. And I'm so excited about being on the show and meeting you, because we can talk about this process, because it's all legal.
Right.
I want to do everything legal, and the United States is part of the United Nations. They're one of the co-founders with 4 other nations, but everybody operates off the law of nation, and international law trumps everybody and everything. And so whether you're a small nation, big nation, weak nation, the laws of nation is in play. And the American slave nation has its own constitution. It has its Declaration of Independence. It has separated from, and I might as well put it out there, I'm not voting anymore, because I have done exactly what our political fathers did in 1776, where they separated themselves from the political bands. I won't vote no more, because I don't want to be a part of that, because there were some hypocrites back then. They had slaves. Many of the white founding fathers had slaves. And so we have to
had
look
children that they enslaved.
Exactly. And so what we need to do is follow exactly what our white 56 founding fathers did when they separated from Great Britain and made the Republic of the United States. And we're no longer a republic, we're federal, because we're living under 2 contracts, the Constitution of 1789 and the Constitution of 1871. So we got to understand American history. We need to understand British history as well as American slave history. When you have this information, you're now empowered to be able to do things differently, speak differently, act differently, and bring about a positive change.
That's quite a mouthful, because like I said, if you look at it in retrospect to what they're telling us in instructing our kids today in schools, I mean, there was a time when we had segments of Black history. How long did that last? I have not seen anybody talking about, well, I got a Black history report to do that. I don't think they're even trying to discuss it nowadays, because it's not relevant to them. Well, and if it's not relevant to helping their cause, okay, then they're going to give us a cause they want us to believe in. That's correct. Right. Distractions. But I mean, that's the Bible said, you know what I'm saying, where there's confusion, there's no good work. That's correct. So as long as they can keep us diffusing what's going on around us in our neighborhood, we don't have time to look outside over the walls and see what they're doing over there, waiting for the next step. They get past this hurdle, they got something else.
Well, we've got to get out of this. 60s. You see what happened in the 60s when we had our Black pride, our Black power, and they've hijacked our civil rights movement. It's just, it got diluted and given over to other people. We still never got our reparations or our civil rights. What we didn't get, I think, and I've studied civil rights, and we were kind of 1 degree off course when we probably should have been focused on equal status. They're 2 different things. Civil rights means somebody can grant you those rights, but equal status means your position and that of others in standing. And so we've been getting a little bit of the pie when in reality we really own the whole pie. But we've just been thinking wrong. Well, it's not even a question of owner. Like you said, we had it from the beginning. There was one guy that was saying there was a white man who was really compassionate, and he was taking down a slave narrative. And he felt like, okay, I agree with you. You guys have been mistreated. He said, I'll tell any white person I meet that these Black people deserve to have anything they merit. He said, but you don't understand something. You can't give me. He said, you think you're being liberal and that you understand and you're not being racist, but you can't give me what I already have. You think you're taking something away from me, but you can't give me what I already have. I already have that, right? You're taking it away. So And that's something that people, they didn't understand, the distinction between that.
I don't think that the American system is broke. I'm going to come out the box.
Okay, come on.
It is set up how the original founders set it up, the 56 founding fathers. They signed a contract for those who, it was for their prosperity and their families only. Mm-hmm. It wasn't for the larger group. And you being an attorney, you would know this. I know you know this, that if you're not a party to the contract, a signer on the contract, you have no right to say anything. And that contract was set up for those 56 guys, and they pledged to them their lives, their honor, and their resources to each other. Mm-hmm. But it wasn't for African slaves. It wasn't for women. It was for those 56 guys. And so when I look at, I've really studied the Declaration of Independence, and I saw another side to it. And so we can't really complain because we weren't parties to the signature of that.
Well, so the Declaration of Independence was an act of sedition, which was an act of treason. It was an illegal contract from the very beginning.
Now we get to the meat and potatoes. It was illegal.
It was an illegal contract. Remember what we were talking about, quid pro quo. He used that term, which is a contract term, which means that there has to be consideration.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm. And there was no consideration, and they even took away Black people's right to vote by saying that they were going to be 3/5 because they outnumbered. At that time, slavery was so huge in the South that they outnumbered white people at least 5 to 1 or more. And that's one of the reasons why they systematically did so much genocide, to cull down our numbers to the point where, they could have a chance to exceed our population. Because in the South, and even to this day, the South still has more Black people. But due to all the voter suppression and crazy stuff that they do, they're still able to keep governors and all the different electors white. That's the reason why they did the Electoral College.
Really, right, to keep the slaves against the slaves.
It wasn't to keep the slaves against the slaves, but it was to keep the masses from actually controlling anything. Because if everybody's vote counted, then they could have the masses take them out.
Set up the Electoral College for that purpose.
That's what I'm saying. But they set it up so that they would always be in power because, no pun intended, the Electoral College trumps your vote.
That's correct. I want to say one thing is that the Republic of the United States did not have citizens. It was strictly for international commerce and for business. When Dred Scott was part of the Supreme Court in 1857, it says that no African, no Negro, no Black will ever be part of the Republic of the United States. And the Republic of the United States went out of business on March 27, 1860, when the 7 states walked out of the Articles of Convention meeting because they did not want to give up the slaves. And that's when the Civil War started. And for 10 years, this country operated as a totalitarian society from 1860 to 1771. And this is all documented. And then that's when the federal United States came into existence on February 27th, 1871. So I've studied American history. So we're living under 2 constitutions.
Right. So, I actually broke a contract. I was in the process of breaking it, but unfortunately the clients didn't stick with me on this. They had a choice of law of 3 different states to break their recording agreement. One of them was Georgia. They were underage. In Georgia, they actually had a statute that they put in place to enslave white children, because the slaves during the war were leaving and they weren't manning the farms. So they literally put in a child labor type of contract, which is not conscionable here. And, in California, you can't do it. In New York, you can't do it. But it happened in Georgia, since they said that they had choice of law. I said, well, we choose Georgia then, and we'll break the contract. We choose California because they thought that the Georgia law would prevail, but they put 3 different choices of law. And since they did, we chose California because they literally did have contracts to hold children to hold children responsible for labor. And those contracts were under the Confederates. So the way I was breaking it was that government is not in existence anymore. Remember, they coined money. The Confederacy coined money. And they created some laws during that time. This particular statute was created under the Confederacy.
That's right.
Which is no longer in existence.
Right. And it went out of, when it went out of business. And I will challenge the 14th Amendment, because the 14th, the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment is how federal laws operates. It cannot touch the amendments previously before that. And the 13th Amendment, the organic 13th Amendment, since we're on this discussion, it was originally that no attorney could be a part of the federal government under the organic 13th Amendment. But when they hijacked it and created the new federal United States, they took that out and made it for slavery. You can break any type of law, you can go back in servitude. And the 14th Amendment took away our God-given rights, because they're common laws, which inalienable rights that God has given us. But under the current 14th Amendment, it took that away from the people and made them slaves now to the federal United States government. I call it like how it is. I study history now. And so we have to challenge that piece, because there were free Negroes.
Yeah,
there were free Negroes
always.
Up until the 14th Amendment, which they were forced into slavery under the federal United States. And it also opened up the door for corporations. It created the corporation under the 14th Amendment to do the things that it's doing today. So we have to learn American history. We got to understand American slave history, and we need to understand British history, international laws, because international laws trump all laws.
Right.
And so when we understand these pieces here, we will see it differently. We can be able to do things different and operate differently.
Well, you know what? I do want to bring our attention to something we're doing in our community. And I haven't looked at the schedule, but this is the screening schedule for the film festival that starts, Pan-African Film Festival, that's in our community starting the 11th, which is tomorrow, in fact.
Yes.
It starts
I'm going
tomorrow.
to the opening now.
And until the 28th, is it? Till the 23rd. And that seems to be like one way to be able to reach out, and the filmmakers
and learn other history from other countries.
Exactly.
About what they're doing.
Exactly. So our hats are off to those people that are putting that together each and every year. It's really, I've been to ones in the past, and it's really been an experience to see some of the films and stuff like that.
Yeah, and what I love is sometimes I talk to Ayuko, he's the executive director, and he tells me what films I should see and what the history is, and even what books I should read to know about, like, for instance, he told me about a book, How Europe Underdeveloped Africa. And there's also, there's right now the opening night is tomorrow, and they have the title of the film is Hero, and it's really about a guy who really started a whole bunch of nations, the African nations, and created this separation from the colonialism that had the colonial rule that they were under, and created that consciousness, much like Marcus Garvey did, because Marcus Garvey created a consciousness, and he was one of the first people to say we needed our own nation, so that we had a sovereign nation that we could go to for redress.
Exactly.
And that was 40 years later, the Jewish people came up with that and got, Israel.
Right.
And that was their reasoning behind it, was that they wanted a sovereign nation that they could go to that could mount an army, and that they could go to for redress, and that could then take redress against other people that mistreated them on their behalf.
And that's what we have to do. That's one reason why I created the American Slave Nation, because in order for us to get reparation, it's going to happen out at the International Court. That's where we have to take it. Because America created our culture, and we deserve reparation.
Yeah, we do. Now, if we get it or not, you know what I'm saying? We've been talking about this for years, 40 acres and a mule. I've already come to the conclusion we're not getting for it. They don't even have enough mules now. Not that we never wanted the 40 acres.
They don't. They say that, but they cry broke. But they mint money whenever they want to. Today, I read an article that Georgetown University, these students there, made it a mission that the school has to give reparations to the slaves that they sold in order to save the school from bankruptcy. They sold about 272 people into slavery. They were actually working on the campus, which was kind of a very benevolent thing to do. But they sold them into Louisiana, some of the worst plantation slavery that you can think of. So they sold them into Louisiana, and they've now traced the descendants of those people. And they've said, you have to give reparations. So it's about 8,000 people now that they have to give reparations to. So now they've decided that the reparation is $400,000 a year. They're going to set aside $400,000 a year. Now, I went on the website to see what is the tuition for a 4-year degree from Georgetown University. Well, guess what? It's about $300,000. So when you factor in living expenses,
Zero.
You're at $400,000. So they're literally giving you one scholarship a year. But what about if you don't want to go to Georgetown, or if you already have your degree or whatever, what are you going to do? And what's $400,000 split 8,000 ways? They'd have to have 8,000 years in order to give everybody the $400,000.
Right.
But they have an endowment of over $1 billion. An endowment of over $1 billion.
They got jokes. That's what they did.
Which came out of slavery, because if you take those 272 people that they sold, let's just go with present value. It saved the school from bankruptcy. So what is the school worth now? It has $1 billion endowment.
If
they hadn't have sold those 272 people,
it wouldn't have been in existence.
It wouldn't have been in existence.
So they're actually on board. They're the board members now.
Yeah, right. So they owe them more than that.
Alumni.
That's
so let's get serious.
No, they owe them the school, like you said.
Let's take it over. But this one here, the Pan-African Film Festival, it's coming on. It's at the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza in Los Angeles. Mondays through Saturday, it's 10 to 9 p.m. Sunday from 11 to 7. If you want some information, go on to www.PAFF, Pan-African Film Festival, that's the acronym for it, .org. And you've got to have your face in place, because if you're wanting to find out some reality to the reality and wake-up calls, you'll find it there, man. It's got a lot of stuff. So you guys, patronize. Do that page. Now
It's not just movies though. It's fashion.
Yeah.
It's art and
good
culture,
time. It's good
comedy.
Time. Black folk.
Oh yeah.
Black
yes.
folk.
Partying.
Dressing up.
Dancing. Yes.
So we front line, back line, all that. So now I want to go back before we dwindle down, because time flies when you're having fun. But I really want to get back into the books you're having here and let the people know it's a good read. You guys, it's a really easy to read book. It's this one especially here. This is your captain speaking. Life lessons I learned from 3,500. You could sit back and you could read this during lunchtime. Okay, and then when you finish that one, you can go into
collaboration, teamwork, and networking.
Okay.
Then you can go, and this is the one that I'm really big on. America's Little Black Book. It's by Norris Shelton. And I'm having the conversation that can begin to heal our culture.
Right.
Because we got to begin to think differently, speak differently, and act differently. But relevant education is the key now to us getting out of our condition. Because we've had, as you put it, can I give you another word? We're dealing with economic genocide right now here in America.
That's right.
And so we have to be the ones to fix it. We can't wait on anyone else to come to our communities. They're coming to the community to take your community with genocide.
Right.
Yeah.
However,
it's a war.
It's a war. But when we are armed with the right information, we can really make a difference and bring about the change.
Right.
But we have to be at least willing to have the conversation, and we need to have it as soon as possible so we can put some processes in place to heal our communities.
Right. Now, you were talking a little bit about the faction that you have, that you're part of, as a prime minister of our own
nation
think tank. Okay, so I know we're winding down, but let's talk about a few ways we can get involved. How can average Joe USA tap in?
One of the first things that they can do, they can go out to www.descendantsofamericanslaves.com.
Okay.
There's a lot of information out there. One of the things that we can get involved, this is so important. We're at the 2020 census. $500 billion. Say $500 billion.
$500 billion?
$500 billion have been set aside for this U.S. census that will be divided up among the cultures. And what we want to be able to do, and see, I went to Washington and talked with Congressman Clay Lacy about getting the American slave listed on the 2020 census here a few years ago. And he ran it up the polls, and he said, but you have to go back and talk to your communities. We're not going to put it on there. I said, it'd be a lot easier because it's just a computer.
Right.
But he said, no, what we can do on page 7, line 7 of the U.S. Census, write in the word American slave. Slavery is our culture legal name and business name, because it was a business. And so we now want to do business in our culture name, because that name is worth trillions of dollars. The reason why they don't want you talking about it, one, for shame, because then they have to pay. Mm-hmm. If I owe you trillions of dollars, I talk all bad about it. I wouldn't want you to mention that word.
Right.
But no, that word is a good name, because we now have changed the narrative, and they were valuable back then. They used to brag about the slaves they had in the marketplace. I got this big old hump, but because corporate America changed it, it's now shame. No. Our culture is an awesome culture. Mm-hmm. We built this country. You have birthrights, and you should want to claim your birthrights, because other cultures are coming to America to get your birthrights because you of the name. The Jewish people, I'm a descendant of the Holocaust, and they get paid. Well, we're descendants of American slaves. We need to get paid. Mm-hmm. Hey, I'm switching it back over to you.
No, I appreciate that, man. And like I said, because you said a lot, and we're definitely going to have to do this again and really just spend some time on this one here, because you're bringing a lot of components, man, that are just hitting so real and so hard, man. And I'm going to read some of the books, too, beside this one here. I'm going to get some of the other books. But meantime, I really appreciate you coming down, and, you know what I'm saying, the way that it happened. It was supposed to be.
It's all your fault. We connected. We crossed.
I know.
We linked up. You said, what are you doing tonight?
And you said, I'll make it a point to come down. I'm glad you shared with us. So it's a good thing. You're flying out Thursday, so be safe up there. You know what I'm saying? 35,000 feet and stuff like that. You know what I'm saying? And we appreciate you taking this time, man.
Oh, it's my privilege, my pleasure, and my honor. You know, I made a commitment the night Dr. King was assassinated when Watts burned down that we're going to fix this thing. And so I've been laser and razor sharp focus. The word focus, it stands for follow one course until successful.
Wow.
I like that.
So
I love these
we're
acronyms.
On point. Yeah, I love those.
So now I have TSA and I have focus.
We got to put that in our vocabulary.
Follow one course until successful. I like that.
Mrs. Rhonda Dixon, I appreciate you coming in, because you're the same one. You came to my birthday party yesterday. We had a great birthday party at Buca de Beppo, something like that.
Buca de Beppo.
Yeah, in Grove, and it was a good one. So thanks for you guys that came out and celebrated with me. And then you said you'd come on today, and you made it a point, and we're glad that you came on.
Thank you.
So, next, if you can give me like 30 seconds, give an address or a phone number, or whatever, if they can catch up with you.
So right now I'm an entertainment lawyer, but I'm also doing criminal law, because that's another way I want to serve my community. I'm tired of people getting railroaded into jail for little bitty things. So I started something called 877-DUILady.com.
Hey.
And you can call me at 877-DUI-LADY. That's 877-384-5329.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you. Doc, would you give us
5239.
Okay. Give us how they can reach you.
You can reach me at drgerald1@gmail.com or AmericanSlaveInc@gmail.com.
I appreciate it. Ladies and gentlemen, I told you we were into a great show today. Do go out there and support your blackness. Support the Pan-African Film Festival at the Baldwin Hills, which is a few blocks up the street. And like I said, you know what I'm saying, each and every week I say, above all, put God first and everything else will follow. That I guarantee. Until next week, thanks for joining us on the Cultures of Film and Music, and we will see you next week. We're going to be bringing in Bam Crawford. We'll have with Makita and Dr. Natasha. So stand by, stand with us, and we'll love you until the end. God bless.
Heaven must have known that this day would surely come along. Had some angels watching me to make sure that I fulfill my